The first thing people noticed on set was the silence. Not the normal kind of silence that happens when cameras are preparing or lights are being fixed. This was a different silence. A silence that felt personal. A silence that felt like something had broken between two people who were once close. The crew did not speak about it openly, but they saw it. They saw how Keanu walked past Sandra without looking at her. They saw how Sandra tried to smile at him and he looked away. They saw how the two actors who once made the world believe in chemistry now stood in the same room like strangers. No one knew what happened. No one dared to ask, but everyone felt it. Sandra felt it the most. She stood near the makeup mirror, pretending to fix her hair, her eyes looking into her own reflection but seeing nothing. Her thoughts were louder than any sound around her. Why was he acting like this? Why would he suddenly stop talking to her? Why did he not even greet her in the morning like he always used to? She tried to replay every conversation from the past week, trying to find something she might have said wrong, something that could have hurt him. But there was nothing. No fight, no disagreement, no misunderstanding. Nothing that made sense. Sandra breathed in slowly and looked at herself. Her heart felt heavier than her body. He was not just a co-star. He was someone she trusted, someone she respected, someone who understood silence not as distance, but as a language. So why was this silence different? Why did it feel cold instead of calm? The first assistant director called everyone to the set. A new scene was about to start, an emotional one. Sandra was supposed to cry in it, and the director wanted everything to feel natural and raw. Sandra walked to her mark. She looked around. Cameras moved into position. Lights adjusted. Sound checked. She waited for Keanu to join her. He did, but he did not look at her. He stood on his mark, his face calm, his eyes focused somewhere else. He did not smile. He did not nod. He did not even blink in her direction. Sandra's chest tightened. The director said, "Action." A tear was supposed to fall from her eyes in the first few seconds, but nothing came. Her throat closed. Her heartbeat felt loud but empty. Her mind had no space left for acting. It was already drowning in real emotion. The scene failed. The director cut the shot and asked for a reset. Sandra did not move. She kept standing, frozen in confusion, searching Keanu's expression for even a small sign of warmth, a hint of understanding, something that told her this was not real. But his face stayed still, emotionless, controlled. She felt like a stranger in her own story. The director called for a break. Sandra walked away slowly, not wanting her steps to look as heavy as her heart. She went to the quiet corner of the set, where no one came unless they needed silence. She sat down, pressing her fingertips against her eyes, trying to fight tears she was not allowed to show. The tears were not for the scene. They were for something she did not understand. She whispered to herself, "Maybe he is tired. Maybe he is going through something. Maybe it has nothing to do with me. Maybe I am thinking too much. Maybe." But the word maybe did not calm her. It only made her feel lost. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, hoping it was him. It was not. It was a crew member, holding a bottle of water. The person tried to be kind, but the silence surrounding her was already louder than any comfort. She thanked them politely, even though her voice almost cracked. When the crew member left, she closed her eyes again. Why is he doing this to me? Her mind replayed every smile they once shared, every inside joke, every quiet moment where they did not need to speak because they understood each other. But all those memories only made the present feel colder. She wished he would just look at her and tell her what was happening. Even a cold truth was better than silent confusion. Far from her, Keanu stood near the camera equipment, watching her from the corner of his eye. His face gave nothing away. Not anger, not sadness, not regret. Nothing. His silence was not empty. It was intentional, controlled, calculated, yet no one knew why. The director returned and told everyone they would try another emotional take in 1 hour. Sandra nodded without saying a word. She stood up slowly, like someone carrying something fragile inside her that could break if she moved too fast. She walked past Keanu. He did not move. He did not speak. He did not even blink. But this time, Sandra stopped. She turned toward him. Her voice low, almost trembling, she said, "If I did something wrong, just tell me. Please. I do not deserve this silence." Keanu did not answer. He just looked past her, as if she was not even there. That moment broke something inside her. Not loudly, not visibly, but quietly, like a thin thread snapping somewhere deep in the heart. She nodded slowly, accepting his silence like a closed door, and walked away. The crew watched. No one spoke. Even the cameras seemed to pause. As Sandra disappeared behind the set curtains, Keanu finally exhaled. His shoulders dropped and his eyes softened for a moment. But no one saw it. No one saw the battle happening inside him. The silence he was giving her was not a punishment, but she did not know that, and he was not ready to explain. Not yet. The hours passed. The sun dipped. Lights shifted into night mode for a late shoot. Sandra returned to set. Her eyes were tired, but her spine was straight. She was ready to try again. She had built her career on strength. She would not let tears control her. She stood on her mark, took a slow breath, nodded to the crew. The director raised his hand to start, but before the word action could leave his mouth, something unexpected happened. Keanu walked off set. No warning. No explanation. He just walked away, leaving everyone stunned. The director looked confused. The crew whispered. Sandra stared at the empty spot where Keanu stood just seconds ago. For the first time since the silence began, Sandra felt something stronger than confusion. She felt fear. Not fear of the scene. Not fear of failure. Fear that she had truly lost someone she once thought would always stay. The tension in the set was not just professional anymore. It was human, raw, unpredictable, silent. The director called for a pause. Cameras powered down again. Sandra stood still, not moving, not speaking. Her mind was a storm, but her body was a statue. She did not know that this silence was not rejection. It was design. She did not know that Keanu had already planned something. She did not know that this silence was not distance. It was the beginning of something she could not yet see, and she did not know that the first tear she would shed on camera would not be acting. It would be real, and it would change everything. The night air around the studio felt heavier than usual. The kind of heaviness that did not come from weather, but from emotions that no one was brave enough to speak aloud. The crew returned to their stations, but the energy had changed. The silence that followed Keanu's sudden exit was not just confusion anymore. It was concern. It was discomfort. It was the feeling that something was happening behind the surface and no one knew what it really was. Sandra stayed in her spot, waiting, even though no one told her to. She did not leave the set. She did not sit down. She just stood there, staring at the empty space where Keanu stood before walking away. She did not want to admit it, but a small part of her kept hoping he would walk back in and explain everything. But minutes passed, then more, and still there was no sign of him. The director checked his watch again and again. Assistants whispered. Makeup artists stayed still, pretending to reorganize brushes they had already cleaned. Sound techs lowered their volume out of respect for the tension in the air. Even the lights felt dimmer, like they were waiting too. Finally, the director approached Sandra. She expected answers. Instead, she received uncertainty. "We will give him a few minutes," he said softly. She nodded, but her heart resisted the patience. A few minutes felt like a lifetime when the silence came from someone who once knew how to calm your storms. She walked to the corner of the set again, the same spot where she had tried to hold herself together earlier. She sat down, pressing her hands together, trying to stop her thoughts from circling the same question again and again. What changed? What did I do? Was this about me at all? She took a slow breath. Breathing used to be enough. Now even that felt hard. She lifted her eyes and looked around at the crew. She knew they were pretending not to watch her, but she felt their eyes. She felt their questions. She felt their sympathy. And somehow, instead of comfort, it only deepened the loneliness. She whispered to herself. He could have just told me. Anything. Even one sentence. A soft, fragile voice that no one else heard, behind her. The studio doors opened. Footsteps echoed. Sandra turned immediately. Keanu walked back in, but something was different. He was not alone. A technical team followed him, carrying boxes, screens, and props. The director looked confused. Sandra stood up slowly, not knowing whether to feel hopeful or scared. Keanu did not look at her, not even for a second, but he walked with purpose. Calm. Focused. As if he had been planning something long before the silence ever began. The director approached him and spoke in a low voice, but Keanu just nodded and continued walking. He began. Rearranging things on set, not random things, specific things. The bus seat from their first movie together. The same yellow lighting they once. Rehearsed under even the old coffee thermos Sandra. Used on the earliest shoots. No one understood what was happening. Not yet. Keanu did not explain. He did not speak. He simply adjusted the space like a painter preparing a canvas. The crew stood frozen, unsure if they were supposed to help or stay out of the way. Sandra watched him, her heart beating faster. Not with anger this time, but with confusion so deep it almost felt like fear. This was not the behavior of someone who was angry. This was the behavior of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The set began to transform into something that did not exist in the script. Something familiar but not staged. Something emotional but not directed. Something personal. Keanu finally spoke, not to Sandra, not to the director, but to the entire crew in a calm voice that carried weight. No one calls action. No one gives cues. No one interrupts. His voice was steady, controlled, respectful, yet commanding. Then he added, "This has to be real." Sandra's breath stopped for a moment. She stared at him, not blinking, not breathing. Her heart did not know whether to break or rebuild itself. He turned and finally looked at her. Not cold, not distant, but serious, intense, like he was holding something important behind his eyes. Still, he did not explain. He walked to his mark. The crew looked at the director for approval, but the director stayed silent. He understood something was happening that did not need his hand. Sandra slowly walked to her place. She stood across from Keanu. There were cameras around them, but no camera felt as heavy as his silence. She wanted to ask 100 questions, but her voice stayed trapped inside her. Keanu looked at her, and for the first time in days, there was emotion in his eyes. Not kindness, not anger. Something deeper. Something unspoken. Something that made her heartbeat shift into a rhythm she could not control. Then, without warning, he turned away from her and walked off set again. Everyone froze. Sandra's chest tightened again. But this time, it was not because he ignored her. It was because it felt like he was leading her somewhere, and she did not know where that place was. The director whispered to a camera operator, "Keep rolling." "We do not touch anything, Keanu." Returned a minute later with something in his hand, a folded piece of cloth. He placed it in Sandra's hands. Gently, she looked at it. It was her old jacket, the one she used to wear during their earliest film days. The one she had forgotten even existed. The one she once said made her feel brave when she doubted herself. The one he had quietly kept all these years. She looked at him with tears building in her eyes, but she did not cry. "Not yet," she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" His answer came slowly. With a voice so soft, the room felt it more than heard it. "Because you forgot what you carry inside you." She did not know how to respond. She could not. Her throat closed again. Not from pain, from something deeper. He did not let her speak. He said one more thing, and sometimes, to remind someone of their fire, you have to take away the light around them. She did not know what that meant. Not fully, not yet, but the moment his words touched her, something inside her shifted. Not healed, not broken, just moved. As if the silence she hated was never silence at all, as if it was shaping something she did not even see. Before she could process it, a voice from behind shouted, "Camera is still rolling," and she realized this was not rehearsal anymore. This was real. The emotion on her face was not acting. The look in Keanu's eyes was not scripted. The confusion, the pain, the respect, the history, the bond. None of it was fake. The director said nothing. He knew he was not directing this moment. Keanu was, but not for himself, not for her. And that was the first time Sandra's eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness, from truth, from the sudden understanding that the silence was not rejection, it was intention, and he had chosen it for a reason she still could not see. But she would feel it soon. Keanu stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the calm energy in his presence, and without breaking eye contact, he said only 4 quiet words. "You are not acting now." The world around them stopped. Every crew member watched. Every breath paused. Every heartbeat waited. Sandra felt something rise inside her, not scripted. Emotion. Real emotion. The very thing she thought she had lost, and in that moment, she finally cried. The moment the first tear fell, the entire set changed. Not in sound, not in movement, but in feeling. Something invisible shifted in the air, as if every person present understood they were no longer watching a scene. They were watching truth. Sandra was not acting. She was breaking. And Keanu stood in front of her. Not as a co-star, not as a distant stranger, but as someone who had been silently guiding her to this moment without ever touching her or speaking to her. The silence between them no longer felt cold. It felt intentional, alive, full. Sandra stood there, eyes wet, jacket still in her hands. She was not sure if she wanted to drop it or hold it like a memory. The weight in her chest had changed, not vanished. It was still heavy, but now it carried something new. Confusion mixed with understanding. Pain mixed with awareness. Hurt mixed with something like gratitude, even though she did not want to feel grateful for days of silent distance. Keanu watched her closely, but still did not step forward. He let the space stay between them. He let her feel every wave of emotion instead of rescuing her from it. His eyes were calm but not cold, distant but not detached. "Controlled but not uncaring," she whispered, weak and slow. "Why did you do this to me?" He did not answer. Not yet. He only motioned with his hand, a small gesture toward the cameras, as if to say, "This moment matters. Do not waste it with questions. Feel before you ask. Truth first, answers later." And somehow, she understood. For the first time in days, she felt something stronger than doubt. She felt presence. Real presence. Her eyes did not stop crying. The tears were not loud. They did not come with shaking or dramatic sobs. They were quiet tears. The kind that fall when a person finally feels something they had been trying not to feel for too long. She wiped nothing. She let the tears stay. She did not move away from the pain. She stood inside it, and Keanu watched like someone who knew exactly what was happening inside her, because he had already walked through that fire himself. The director did not say cut. No one dared to. The cameras kept rolling. For the first time since the silence began, Sandra felt his eyes not as a wall but as a mirror. And in that mirror, she did not see weakness. She saw a woman who had been holding everything together for so long that she forgot what it felt like to feel anything honestly. She took a slow breath and said, softer this time, "You could have just talked to me." Keanu blinked once. Not a rejection, not agreement, just a pause before he finally spoke again. His voice was steady. "If I told you, it would not be real." She stared at him. The words did not make sense at first. But then, like a slow-turning key inside a locked door, she started to feel what he meant. He did not want an acted tear. He wanted a real one. He did not want performance. He wanted truth. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the thoughts settle inside her. When she opened them again, she saw something she had not noticed before. Keanu's hands were slightly tense. His fingers curled, as if he was holding something inside himself too. The silence was not easy for him either, but he accepted the discomfort because he believed the emotion it would awaken would matter, more than the comfort he had taken away. She understood one thing then. He did not ignore her to hurt her. He ignored her to awaken her, but understanding did not erase the hurt. She looked at him, tears still resting on her eyelashes, and asked, "Did you know I would cry like this?" His reply came softly. "I knew you were holding more inside you than you showed." The room felt smaller. The space between them felt heavier. There was no anger in his voice. No triumph, no pride, just certainty. Certainty that came from knowing her. Certainty that came from history. Certainty that came from respect. The director whispered to his assistant, "Do not stop recording. Whatever this is, it is stronger than anything in the script." Keanu took one slow step closer to Sandra. Not enough to touch, just enough to shift the energy. She felt it. She looked at him like someone who wanted answers but was also afraid of hearing them. He said, "You have been acting in control for too long, even when you were breaking inside. I could see it." She did not speak. Because he was right. She had been holding herself together for the world, for fans, for interviews, for cameras, for the version of herself people expected. She did not even realize how numb she had become until the silence forced her to face it. And she hated it, and she needed it, and she did not know which feeling was stronger. She whispered, "You could have told me you were doing this for me." Keanu shook his head gently. "You would have tried to stay strong." She froze again, because that was true. If he had warned her, she would have smiled through it. She would have forced herself to look fine. She would have softened the emotion so no one had to worry about her. She would have stayed professional. She would have stayed numb. The truth hurt, but it was real. He continued, "I wanted your heart to speak, not your training." Her breathing changed. It was not calm. It was not steady, but it was honest. Then something unexpected happened. A camera light suddenly flickered, a small electrical glitch. The crew turned, trying to fix it quickly. But in that brief second, the moment between Sandra and Keanu shifted, not because of the glitch, because Sandra stepped forward, only a little closer. But enough. Her eyes did. Not hold anger anymore, they held a question deeper than words. Was this kindness, or was this too much? Was this care, or was this control? Was this respect, or was this something else entirely? Keanu did not look away. He let the question live in the silence. He gave her the space to choose how she would feel about it. That was the first moment she realized something important. His silence was not control. It was trust. He trusted her with the full force of her own emotion. He trusted her not to fall apart forever, but only long enough to feel again. He trusted her strength more than she trusted it herself, and that was what hurt the most. Not the silence, but the fact that he had more faith in her emotions than she did. She held the jacket tighter, breathing heavier, eyes locked on his, and the world around them disappeared. No cameras, no crew, no stage. Just two people and the truths they were finally facing. Before she could speak again, the set door opened. Someone stepped inside. Not a crew member, not a director. Someone unexpected. Someone who froze the entire room with their presence. And the moment. Their eyes met Sandra's. Her expression changed completely. Her tears stopped. Her breath paused. Even Keanu turned, and the silence that filled the space was not emotional anymore. It was shock, pure shock, and no one moved. The door closed slowly behind the person who entered, and the sound of it echoed through the silent studio like a slow heartbeat. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the cameras, still rolling, felt like they were holding their breath. Sandra stood frozen, her fingers still gripping the old jacket, her eyes wide with a mix of recognition and disbelief. The person who had walked in was not part of the crew, not a replacement actor, not a random visitor. It was the acting coach who trained Sandra in her early career. The same woman who once told her, "Emotion is not something you perform. Emotion is something you unlock." The same woman Sandra had not seen in years. She was older now, but her presence was still sharp, intentional, almost surgical. She stood there, looking directly at Sandra, then at Keanu, then back at Sandra again, as if she already knew everything without needing to ask a single question. Sandra's throat tightened. She managed to whisper, "What are you doing here?" The coach did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at Keanu, and for the first time since the silence began, something in Keanu's eyes shifted. Respect, deep respect. Not the polite kind, the real kind. The coach finally spoke, her voice low but steady. He asked me to be here. Every head in the room turned toward Keanu. Every heartbeat in the room paused. Sandra stared at him, unable to speak. Keanu did not move, but his calm expression finally broke, just slightly. Not into guilt, not into regret, but into something that looked almost like truth, finally surfacing. Sandra slowly repeated the words as if they tasted heavy in her mouth. "You asked her to come here?" Keanu nodded once. Quiet, simple, unquestioning. The coach stepped forward, but not toward him, toward Sandra. Her voice softened, but not in a way that made things easier. "You have not been honest with your own emotions for a long time." He saw it. He asked me to watch this moment, not as a director, not as a friend, but as the only person who knows how hard you try not to feel when the world expects you to. The words hit like truth, disguised as kindness. Sandra's breath shook. She wanted to defend herself, but no excuses came. She wanted to deny it, but her heart knew it was the truth. She had not been acting from truth for a long time. She had been acting from survival, from pressure, from expectation, not from emotion. She looked at Keanu, and for the first time she did not see coldness. She saw what he had been doing. He had not abandoned her. He had prepared her. He had not ignored her. He had removed the comfort she was hiding behind. He had created space for something real to return. But even understanding that did not erase the hurt she felt from the silence. Her voice trembled. "You could have told me. You could have trusted me enough to explain. You did not have to make me feel like I lost you." The room felt heavier. Keanu finally spoke. "If I told you, you would have acted the right emotions, not the real ones." She stared at him. He was right. And she hated that he was right, because it meant he knew her more deeply than she wanted to admit. The acting coach stood between them now, not as a barrier, but as a mirror. "He did not do this to disrespect you," she said softly. "He did this because he respects you too much to let you perform something fake." Sandra's eyes filled again. But the tears were different this time. Not confusion, not pain, something closer to recognition. She had spent years being praised for control, for professionalism, for strength. And somewhere along the way, she forgot what it felt like to break in front of a camera and let it be real. She whispered, "I did not know I was losing it." Keanu finally stepped closer, his voice calm but no longer distant. "You were not losing it. You were locking it away." The coach nodded, and he unlocked it the only way it could be unlocked. She walked away then, not leaving the set, but stepping back into the shadows as if her role was complete. Keanu and Sandra now stood face to face again. No audience, no silence, just something raw and unfinished between them. Sandra wanted to move, to speak, to do anything that would release the emotions in her chest, but she stayed still, letting them exist. She was not sure if she wanted to thank him or scream at him. Instead, she whispered, "You hurt me." Keanu nodded. "I know." She asked, "Did it matter to you?" He answered, "Yes." Her voice cracked. "Then why did you still do it?" He looked at her, and in his eyes there was no apology, only truth. "Because you were not feeling anything anymore, and the world deserves to see what you really carry inside you. Not the version you learned to control, the version that breathes when you are not acting." Her lips parted slightly. Not to argue, just to breathe. Her eyes were not angry. They were awake, for the first time in a long time. The director watched in silence, understanding that whatever was happening did not belong to cinema. It belonged to humanity. Even the cameras felt like they were filming something sacred. Keanu took another slow breath and said one last sentence. I would rather let you hate me for the truth than let the world love you for something that is not real. The line hit the room with the force of honesty that has no defense. Sandra closed her eyes. Her tears finally stopped. Not because she was fine, but because she was finally feeling. The silence that followed was not empty anymore. It was full of everything they never said. Then, just when the moment felt still enough to settle, the studio doors opened again. It was not the coach this time. It was not crew. It was not anyone Sandra expected. The person who walked in carried a small object in their hand, and when Sandra saw it, her entire expression changed. Her voice left her. Her heart dropped because the object was something she thought was gone forever. Something that only one person could have kept. And the person holding it was the last person she ever expected to see inside that studio. The room went still in shock once again. The room felt like it stopped breathing the moment the stranger walked in. Sandra stood frozen, her eyes locked on the object in his hand. It was small, but it carried the weight of years. The kind of object you do not expect to ever see again. The kind that belongs to a different time, a different version of yourself. The stranger walked slowly toward her, and every step made her heart beat louder. She did not speak. She did not move. She just stared, unable to understand how that object still existed and why Keanu had allowed this moment to happen. When the stranger reached her, he placed it gently in her hand. A tiny silver charm shaped like a sun, the same one she wore on her necklace during her very first movie. The same one she lost on set decades ago. The same one she cried over in secret because it was the last thing her mother gave her before she passed. Sandra's breath broke. She looked at the charm, then at the stranger, then at Keanu. Her voice finally escaped. You kept this. Keanu did not speak. The stranger answered instead. He did. He has kept it all these years. The truth landed like a slow, silent earthquake. She held the charm tighter, feeling a memory she had buried, a pain she had numbed, a piece of herself she thought she had lost forever. Her voice shook. Why did you bring it now? The stranger looked at Keanu before answering. Because he said you were ready to see it. Sandra swallowed hard, ready. The word repeated in her mind. Ready for what? Ready to feel again? Ready to break again? Ready to remember again? She looked at Keanu, and her voice trembled. Not with anger, but with something far more fragile. You kept this for me all this time, and you never told me. Keanu finally spoke. You were not ready then. You would have treated it like a memory, not a truth. Her chest tightened. And now he looked at her with calm certainty. Now you are feeling again. His words were not soft. They were steady. The kind that do not need volume to feel powerful. Sandra looked down at the charm, eyes wet again, but not from pain this time. The tears came from a place deeper than sadness. Something between gratitude and shock. She whispered, all this time, I thought you were hurting me. All this time you were... Doing what? Keanu answered without looking away from her. Reminding you who you are. The room stayed silent for several seconds. Not one person moved. Not one camera blinked. It felt like the moment was no longer being filmed. It was being witnessed. Sandra took one slow step closer to Keanu. Her voice was quiet but no longer shaking. You could have told me the truth, Keanu replied. If I told you the truth, it would not reach your heart. It would only reach your mind. She froze at the sentence, because she knew it was true. Explanations make sense to the brain, but silence forces the heart to wake up, and she had woken, up not gently, but fully. She looked down again at the charm, then back up at him. How long have you had this? Keanu answered. Since the day you dropped it. I promised myself I would give it back only when you needed it, not when you wanted it. Her eyes filled again, not with weakness, with understanding. The silence he gave her was not rejection. The distance was not punishment. It was preparation. But before she could speak again, something unexpected happened. The lights in the studio flickered, not because of a glitch, because someone turned them off. And before anyone could react, the entire room went dark, except for one spotlight, and that spotlight was on Sandra. Everyone turned, cameras kept rolling, but Sandra did not move, because she suddenly realized something. This was not just about the charm. This was not just about the silence. This was not just about the emotion. This was about what Keanu had been building toward from the beginning, and whatever was coming next was not going to be spoken. It was going to be lived. The single spotlight held Sandra in a circle of warm light, while everything around her disappeared into darkness. The crew stood still, unsure whether this was part of the plan or a moment that grew from the silence itself. Sandra did not move. She stood in the light, holding the silver sun charm in her hand, her heart beating in a way she had not felt in years. She did not blink. She did not step back. She just breathed slowly, as if learning how to feel again. Then a second light turned on. Not on Sandra, on Keanu. The two of them stood in two separate spheres of light, facing each other, surrounded by darkness. No script, no mark on the floor, no director giving directions, just truth, standing with nowhere left to hide. Keanu took a slow step forward, leaving the edge of his light. Sandra watched him, her heartbeat rising, not from fear, but from knowing something final was coming. He walked until he reached the border of her light but stopped outside of it, as if respecting a boundary only she could cross. The silence returned, but this time, the silence did not hurt. It waited. Keanu finally spoke, voice quiet, but strong enough to carry through the room. "You are not the same person you were when you lost that charm." Sandra looked down at the charm again. Her fingers curled around it slowly. He continued, "You kept giving to the world. You kept showing strength. You kept showing control. But somewhere along the way, you locked away the part of you that used to feel without fear." Her eyes lifted again, meeting his. "I did not want to take anything from you," he said slowly. "I wanted to give you back what you forgot you still had." She listened in stillness. "So I stepped back," he said. "I removed comfort. I removed familiarity. I removed the noise. Because when everything you lean on is gone, the only thing left is what is real." She felt the truth in every word. He was not explaining to defend himself. He was explaining to free her. She whispered, "But it hurt." Keanu nodded. Truth always hurts before it heals. A tear rolled down her face, not from sadness, but from release. The acting coach, standing in the shadows, watched with the quiet pride of someone witnessing a soul return to itself. Keanu stepped one more inch forward, now standing fully inside the circle of light with her. No barrier between them, no distance left. He spoke softly. "I never ignored you. I was listening to what your silence was saying." Her voice trembled. "And what was it saying?" he answered. "It was saying you were tired of pretending." Her eyes closed, and she felt the weight of every year she had spent carrying strength like armor. When she opened her eyes again, they were different, not broken, not guarded, awake. She took one step forward, not toward the cameras, toward Keanu, and the room, filled with people who had watched this unfold in silence, felt something shift, not like a scene ending, like a wound closing. She held up the charm. "You kept this all this time?" Keanu nodded. "Because you needed to lose it to understand what it meant." She asked softly, "And what does it mean now?" Keanu smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just real. "It means you still shine when the world goes dark." A long silence followed, but it was not empty. It was full. Full of everything that never needed to be spoken before this moment. Sandra took another breath. "And this time it did not feel heavy," she whispered. "Why did you do all this for me?" Keanu looked at her gently. "Because kindness is not always soft. Sometimes kindness means letting someone break so they can rebuild honestly. She blinked back fresh tears. And respect, he added, means believing someone is strong enough to face their own truth without being protected from it. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She did not need them. Her expression said everything. She stepped closer. There were no apologies, no dramatic speeches, no forced emotions, only truth. She placed the charm around her neck again, letting it fall gently against her chest. And Keanu watched with the calm pride of someone who had been waiting for that moment all along. The director, who had not spoken in over an hour, finally raised his hand with a slow breath. His voice was quiet. That was it. No cut, no applause, just stillness, because everyone in the room knew they had not filmed a scene. They had witnessed a transformation. Sandra slowly wiped her face, not hiding the last tear, but letting it exist. Not ashamed, not guarded, not controlled. She turned to Keanu and said the only words she had left. "Thank you for not explaining." Keanu nodded, the smallest smile forming. Some things are not meant to be said, only felt. The acting coach stepped forward, looking at both of them, and said softly, "This is what real acting used to be. Not lines, not performance, truth." The crew stayed silent. They were not silent because they were told to be. They were silent because they understood. They had just seen something rare, something honest, something that did not belong to cinema. It belonged to humanity. Sandra turned to the cameras, then back to Keanu. She whispered, "You did not ignore me. You saw me." He nodded once gently. "And I knew you would see yourself again." And just like that, the silence that once felt like a wall became a bridge, not between two actors, between two humans who knew the value of kindness that does not ask for credit, respect that does not need applause, and love that does not need to be spoken to be understood. The lights slowly came back. On the world resumed, but something inside Sandra would never return to silence again. Because silence was not what hurt her. Silence was what freed her, and Keanu never needed to be thanked for it, because it was never a plan to make her feel weak. It was a plan to help her feel alive.